And be sure to put the date, which is the 11th of July,
1994. Okay.
Good. So now we
we're
already
official.
have it.
Yeah.
Official. We have date and name, and we can start.
Thanks.
You had some questions, Stefano
For Veniero.
or Veniero?
Let's begin from this this idea to work. Actually, your meeting with Gigi and
Okay.
the first meeting about the technical problems. I mean, why? How did you get in touch with Gigi about problems of multiphonics and technique and so on?
I was the American representative to the Congresso Internazionale di Musica Sperimentale here in Venice in 1960, and heard Intolleranza at that time, I believe. Was that not that was the year? And I was very impressed with it, and I was anxious to show Gigi the multiphonics that I've been working on. In 1959, I heard Severino Gazzaloni play a concert in Los Angeles that included the sequenza of Luciano Berio. And when I heard him play two notes at once, I was astounded, and I thought, well, maybe the clarinet can do that too. So I went home and tried for several months without much success. But then I had a Guggenheim grant for 1960 and had time every day to do research on multiphonics, and over a period of a year or so I discovered that there are, well, hundreds of multiphonics available on the clarinet, and that not only are they interesting because they're two notes at a time, but even more because they give us a palette of timbres that is far beyond the normal clarinet sound. And I found there were flute-like sounds, or very raspy foghorn-type sounds, or sounds that sounded like they were amplified. So it became more interesting to me as I proceeded to discover these new timbres, and also that what I did every day, I just methodically tried every conceivable fingering and tried to see what single notes it would produce, and then what combinations of notes it would produce. So in the process of exploring each fingering, I also discovered that super high notes far beyond the normal clarinet range were possible. And also that it was possible to sing while playing for double stops, and that this again, it wasn't the fact that it produced two notes when you sing one note and play the other, but what was most interesting is that the timbre is very peculiar, that if there are narrow intervals, it produces very aggressive beats. And I found that by using a mute, I could change the timbre another way. Not necessarily for multiphonics, but that almost any note of the clarinet, by using a fingering that stops most of the holes, will make the mute effective. Because unlike the trumpet, you know, where the sound is always coming out of the bell, the clarinet, most of the sounds are coming out of the holes that are open rather than the bell. But it's possible to devise fingerings that close most of the holes, so you can go from a muted sound to a normal sound. So anyway, I had discovered these things and wanted to demonstrate them to composers, and have made a big chart of 200 some odd multiphonics with their description in terms of timbre, level of difficulty, fingering, and dynamic limitations. Many of them were quite soft. So I asked Gigi if I could play some of these well, I had a piece that I wrote called Variants that used these multiphonics. I finally, after researching, I put together some little pieces where I tried to make music out of the things that had been more or less
And when this technique was ready?
Pardon?
When this technique was ready? I mean,
when was it ready?
Yeah, how many time did you work?
Well, after
a long time, yeah.
a year.
A year.
I mean, I continued to work,
Oh, 60.
still work, but in 1960 I did most of the, I put the card file together.
Right. So when did you feel ready to demonstrate this kind
Well,
of technique to compose?
after I'd written
Yeah.
the written variants, which
Yeah.
is
And it was in
7 short pieces. Well, I think that was written in 1961, actually.
61.
Actually, the first performance of Intolleranza 60 was in 61.
Okay, so then maybe that's when I
Yeah, so-
tracked down Gigi and talked to him, played for him at
Yes.
that time, I think. And he was interested in what I was doing and took me over to play for La Broca. And La Broca was interested and invited me to do a concert of American music at the Biennale.
That was Mario
Avant-garde music.
Mario La Brocca.
Mario La
Who
Brocca.
was the
Head of the Rai, I suppose. Or head of
Biennale.
Head of the Biennale, yeah. So I then played a concert of American music at the Biennale, which was very well received, and I can't remember now what. I think it wasn't until '65 that Gigi was interested in. I mean, he was interested in doing a piece for me. I'd showed him my catalog of sounds with their description, and he was interested in it, but he didn't yet have an idea that would make it useful for him in a musical way. And so...
That was before Floresta in any case.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was...
That was the time of
Yeah.
At the time, just after Intolleranza, I mean, it's 60,
Yeah.
in the very early 60s, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was 61, and Floresta project started in 66, on the beginning of 66.
Yeah.
No?
And I think maybe about 65, we started to discuss possibilities that could be done.
Till 61, from 61 till 65, your relation, how...
With Gigi?
Yeah.
I saw him only a couple of times. I didn't really see much of Gigi until I started working on Floresta. So I met him and been up to Florence a couple of times. Once when he took me to meet La Broca, and then I played the concert here for the Biennale, and I saw him at that time. But he invited me to stay at his house for a while. I think that's when he started really working on how he could use these multiphonics. And the way we finally we did a collaboration in which he would ask me to, for instance, over a low A, what can you play a soft flute-like sound or whatever, and I'd play it. And so, well, you've got something that's not as rough as that. Well, how's this? And so, we went through timbre by timbre, and he said, yeah, that's good. And then I'd try another one that he would describe verbally, and then I'd try to realize musically, and then we'd readjust and adjust until we came up with what he was looking for. So...
And then, sorry, what about your cassette, the cassette that you sent to Gigi with the first tables of...
Yeah, well, I sent him the diagram list of multiphonics, and I also sent him a tape that had 200 and some odd multiphonics on it. But this isn't something, it's hard as a composer to have a list of 220 objects to use, or even to hear 220. It's not useful. I mean, it's hard to deal with. You can't come to grips with it really. So, I mean, I think in using multiphonics, still today, the best thing is to get a musician that you want to collaborate with and work with them, so that you can be sure that you're getting the sounds you want, because the multiphonics on paper look like string multiple stops, but they're not. The notes are always, some come out strongly and some are barely heard. So without hearing them, you can't really have an idea of what you're getting. So I think with woodwind multiphonics, it's imperative that composers work with the performers they're intending the piece for. So I worked with Gigi both with the acoustic instrument, trying to find the things he wanted, and then went up to Milan and spent several days recording things there. And again, trying sounds that were, I tried to get as close as I could to what he would describe, and then I would adjust it to make it as he wanted it.
That was at the Studio di Fonologia at the Rai in Milano.
That's right. So finally, of course, he mixed these sounds and transformed them electronically. And in addition, we experimented with how the acoustic sounds, the live sounds, would blend with the tape sounds. And then, when we added the ingredients of the actors and the soprano, Liliana Poli, then we had to work out our relationships as an ensemble, and then that ensemble as how it would work with the tape part.
I seem to remember that I was in LA and that Gigi asked me to buy some contact microphones or whatever. What did you say they're called?
Contact microphone
Yeah.
or pickup, yeah.
Pickups.
Yeah.
Well, since 1960, well, around 1960, I started using a pickup mic that was designed by Paul Ketoff, who also designed the Synket that we used at the American Academy.
So
Which
was
was?
that, did he find out about that through you then?
I don't know. I'm not sure whether
Yeah.
Gigi found out about it through me, but I had been using it in other music and had found it useful, especially because you can go directly into an electronic device and transform the sound with a minimum of trouble. I mean, it takes the sound directly from the instrument to the electronic device instead of going through an air mic. So that was the way we worked on Floresta.
It was, you worked alone with Gigi in the Studio di Fonologia. I mean, you
Yes.
came first to Venice and then you
Right.
you went
Right.
to Milan. Okay. I see.
For how long did you work?
Well, I think we were about 5 days in Milano, maybe, because I was staying with friends of his there, and it was less than a week. It was 4 or 5 days, I think. And I think I came up to stay with you guys a couple of times for several days, yeah. And then at La Fenice, when we were having the final rehearsals, we had many hours every day in the theater working on this further.
Which kind of work did you make in preparing the tapes that were subsequently used as a background tape for Floresta? Do you remember?
Well, pretty much the same material that I used in the live clarinet part. It's just we recorded those things, or similar things. In other words, I played some sounds that were of a flute-like soft quality, some that were of rough, harsh quality, some that were broken sounds with beats, and pretty much recorded a patchwork of every type of timbre I could come up with, and then he chose from those the ones he wanted to use for the tape.
How much freedom did you have during the performances after you had finished all of the rehearsals and the piece was actually ready to be performed?
It was pretty much set. It was set, I would say, as much as a actor in a play has his part set. You know, it was less set than a musical performance where everything is measured out to the 32nd note. In other words, rhythmically, I relied mainly on what the actor's words were. And so I knew that when Liliana sang Lucha, that I was to come in with her. Our relationship in the group of actors, singers, and clarinetists was like four actors, and so the pacing of one actor would influence where I would come in. So every performance would be a little bit different, but no more so than several renditions of a Shakespeare dialogue. It was planned in detail, but rhythmically left somewhat open.
In the material that we have here in the archive and that you have seen these days, we have, as you saw, a group of some photocopies actually of what is supposed to be the clarinet part that you copied, that you copied for yourself for the performance. I mean, this is all the material that you used for the actual
That's
performance.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That was your part.
Yep. I had a book in which the words were typed in, and then I would have sounds that I would use that were to coincide with a particular word or to follow a particular word. And in some cases, would refer to the tape, that I would start a sound with a particular word and then stop the sound when I heard a particular sonority on the tape. But it was more often cues from the other.
Yeah, that means that you had no grid of time. I mean, you had no timing. I mean, just you reacted to what was on the tape and what was said and
right. We didn't have
by
no
actors.
stopwatch time. I mean, he
was
used a stopwatch in putting the piece together, but in our performance, well, he was like the director of the play, and we knew the pacing from what he told us, and he used a stopwatch. But our pacing was without mechanical, without a chronometer or tightly constraining rhythmic indications.
Yeah. That means that there was no actual score in the common sense of the word.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was but Gigi had his own performance score as a sound projector, but no complete score of what was supposed to be played by the performance.
Right. I think he had indications of where we were playing, of who was to come in. I mean, I know that he did, but he had indications of where we were to enter. But it wasn't a complete score in the conventional sense that we're used to. Each of us had pretty much constructed our own part with Gigi, and we each had our own part, but it wasn't included at that time on one master score. And I think that's one of the difficulties we've had of trying to reconstruct the piece, is to try and construct a master score when there originally wasn't one is a difficult task.
Can we make a step below and talk about the project, when it started the project? Do you remember to have a discussion with Gigi about the project? I mean, before La Floresta was...
Before Floresta?
No, I mean making Floresta, but about the project of Floresta.
The project of Floresta?
Yeah, I mean with the text and so on. inform about the project and the
Yeah.
whole project? I mean,
Well, pretty much I was working on my corner of the building. You know, it wasn't, I didn't really know what the overall picture was, except in as much as I fit into it. So it wasn't, we didn't really discuss, the overall planning was his big. It's sort of like when you work on a film and you don't really know what it's going to look like when it's all put together, but you assume the director does. So I assumed, you know, I mean, I knew that Gigi had a vision of how it all went together, but my job was just to interpret what the clarinet music was supposed to be like. So beyond that, I didn't, we didn't have discussions of the overall project.
And about the performance rehearsal for the premiere, how many time did you work on? Did you remember that you worked on the tape? Because you said that you didn't use a stopwatch.
Right.
And for that you know very well the background tape to react on this, and also the actors. So where did you begin the rehearsal?
To putting our parts together with the tape.
Yeah.
Well, every time we would perform in a new theater, we would have quite a bit of rehearsal in that theater to get used to the theater and to the sound. And I think at La Fenice we had rehearsals every day for several hours, and some of them with tape and some without. But we had ample rehearsal time and could become accustomed to the environment that the tape provided without too much conscious measuring. We knew the terrain of the background tape and could react to it fairly spontaneously.
And did Gigi give signals?
Yeah, he did cue
use those
something.
light signals, those cues?
I don't think he
in
did
that
give
piece,
lights.
or was it
No,
in
I don't
that-
think, I do, I think he did occasionally give a
Just-
cutoff, but I think he was running the controls actually.
Yeah. So in that piece he did.
Yeah, I don't think he did. I think there was a conductor for the
For the
percussion,
for the percussion.
but they were behind us. We were pretty much on our own. But I did notice in reviewing the part I used that it says cut off with Gigi, so he must
So
have
there
given.
were certain
yeah.
times when he gave him.
Yeah, yeah. But essentially, we were not conducted. And in fact, even that, where it says cut off with Gigi, there's another note to myself saying cut off with the cymbal crash, or you know, what sounds like a
Yeah,
cymbal
yeah.
crash on the tape. So I think our aim was to be able to do it without a conductor. And
Well, the tape was constant.
yeah, we always had
So you-
the tape as a given, so we knew where we were. Yeah.
So let's go back about the question of the freedom that you had in performance.
Okay. Well, unlike John Cage, John Cage wanted to avoid making musical decisions. He tried to arrange things so that his taste was not reflected. In fact, John Cage told me once that if he were working on a composition and an idea came to him, he would stop immediately. He didn't want to have an idea. He wanted it to be objective without his personality put into it. I would say that Gigi was the exact opposite, that you could be free in presenting him with things, but he would choose and say, that's what I want, or that's what I want. And then after that, you didn't have freedom. So there was sort of freedom in displaying your wares, but then when he said, I'll take this, that was that. So it was, Gigi's music is very personal and does reflect
Absolutely.
his personality. Yeah, it's not, so it's, I think the human quality of his music comes about from that it's reflecting his personality as a human being, and with the help of the performers.
Yeah. And after the premiere of Floresta, how many performances did you make with this group?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. We performed it in Palermo, in Milano, in Paris, in Amsterdam, in Venice, perhaps somewhere else in Italy. I can't remember. Oh, Florence. That might have been all the performances I did. Because about that time, in 1966, I went back to the United States to teach at the University of Washington. And so I would fly back to play these performances with Gigi, but it was, hard to arrange so that for me to the expense of the flight and the time.
Were these performances all part of a tour? Or?
No, not a part. They were single, isolated
yeah.
performances. Yeah.
So in what time span did they have?
Over a period of 3 years.
3 years. So you performed at
66 to
Floresta until 69?
Yeah, 66 to 69.
66 to 69.
Yeah, and we did half a dozen performances.
Oh, okay. And the personnel of the group remained the same?
Oh yeah, it was
performances?
it was exactly the same for all the performances I did.
Yeah.
And there was a strong esprit de corps. We liked to work together and worked as a group, sort of like a string quartet, except we were two actors, a soprano and a clarinetist.
But I think that only the percussion players changed it.
Oh, they always changed. Yeah, I think he always used local musicians.
When you performed abroad, it was...
Pardon?
When you performed at Floresta in other European countries, you had different percussion players.
I think so.
With different conductors also? Or
yeah, I think they usually have a percussion group from there and a conductor from there. Someone who rehearsed the percussion. Yeah.
And since you performed at Floresta throughout these 3 years, and did the performance of this change in some details, or it was fixed like that?
Yeah, it was fixed pretty much. I would say that what we did at the first performance, we tried to do it as much like that first performance as we could in the subsequent performances, and I don't remember any dramatic changes. It was,
were there some slight changes? In the score. Did Gigi add or subtract something throughout the?
Not that I recall. No, I think Gigi. I think he was satisfied with the first performance and didn't rewrite. I think that it was set at the first performance, and we did it after that. The only changes that would come about would be from our getting used to doing it, and perhaps like actors may do something different on Wednesday night than they did on Tuesday night. But it was essentially the same thing.
So you did use the same part that you had for the premiere, for the last performance that you did.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And you said Venice twice?
No, I think only once.
Just one.
Yeah. No, I think I was trying to remember where in Italy we performed, and I think there was Palermo, Venice, Milano, and Florence, Maggio Musicale. Yeah.
And do you remember the last performance that you did?
Palermo. Maybe we did it at Rome too.
I was thinking it should have been done.
I think we did do it in Rome.
Did you remember if one or more of these performances were taped or?
No,
No,
I don't
you
know.
don't know.
No, I just played my part and I didn't know.
Right. No, just to know.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware whether they were taped or not. We always had microphones there. Any one of them could be taped, but I didn't know about it. I hope maybe there were. It would be interesting to hear the comparison of a couple of different performances, but I don't know. I think the recording we did that there was just one version that was put out. Well, I suppose 3 different times, right? In America it's out on a CD, but that's probably the same version that was out on the LP, right?
I'm curious.
We don't have a CD.
Never seen it.
Never seen
Yeah,
a CD.
I'm pretty sure
Anyway.
there's a CD
Yeah.
of La Floresta in the United States.
But it, no,
Yeah, but
Deutsche
Deutsche
Grammophon.
Grammophon.
Yeah,
Deutsche Grammophon CD.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a remastering.
a
But
remastered,
the same
yeah,
year,
same
remastering,
performance, yeah.
same.
Yeah. But it would be interesting if there were
Mhm.
another performance that we could compare that with. You know. Well, it's interesting hearing this performance that I heard today with the French clarinetist playing it. From what year was that? 70?
76,
76,
from,
yeah.
from the television of Lugano.
Yeah. And everyone there, it was the same personnel except for me.
Yeah, the
And-
same voices.
Yeah. And it sounded so much like our original performance that in my listening to it first, not seeing what you were doing, I thought it was me. You know, I thought it was. So.
That's a compliment for the clarinetist.
Yeah. So it would be interesting. Well, in other words, hearing that performance was very much like the performance we did originally. And I think it would be good if other when somebody's going to perform this piece, it would be well for them to study carefully what the original recording was like, because that was Gigi's intention. So it's not by any means, an improvisation piece or an open piece. It's meant to be performed as it was originally performed by the group that did it here.
So we have here a tape that demonstrates that you recorded the all the live parts of Floresta without the background tape.
Oh yeah.
You remember that occasion?
Yeah, well, I remember making that recording. I don't remember that was what was used for the LP, but it's possible it was. It's probable it was. I mean, it sounds like from the long silences,
Yeah.
we're probably listening for tape cues, and then we come in with our part.
Have you an idea of the time when this was made? Or?
No.
No.
I would think shortly after our first performance.
After.
When did the first LP come out?
Oh, late. Because it was coupled with Sofferta on the Serena, so it's...
No. The first one was
the first one. I mean, the Archivio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was released just after the first performance.
Yeah, so we had to record it then.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So
between a prize for a record prize.
yeah.
But I suppose in the 68, maybe. Well, in one of the letters that we have, letters to Gigi, we have seen that you asked, certainly in the moment, you asked to Gigi the permit you to use the tape to perform solo clarinet and tape piece. What you can say about this?
Well, I had tried to encourage Gigi to write a piece for me that would be just clarinet and tape. Well, that's what makes it. Well, after we'd done La Floresta, I asked Gigi if he'd write a piece for clarinet and tape so that I could perform it without, on solo recitals. And he was interested in doing that. And in the late 60s, I received the tape from Gigi, labeled Vovoshi, and I thought this was the tape that he intended me to play with. I mean, it had things from Floresta, and so I played, sort of variations on my part from Floresta with the tape that he'd sent me, and learned later that he hadn't intended it to be a piece to be performed, but had just sent it to me to show me what the background tape, how it turned out. So it was a misunderstanding on my part, and and it was a very successful performance. I played it at the University of Washington, and it was...
And the title of the piece, what it was?
Bobosi.
Bobosi, the title was.
Bobosi,
But-
clarinet and tape.
But Bobosi was also a word used in
The working tape.
in the working tape in La Floresta. But did you know this?
I didn't know
this
that.
type? Never heard before
No.
Bobosi.
No.
The first time was when you received the
Right,
tape.
that's right. So I thought, oh, that's nice. He sent me a tape piece.
And without any explanation about this tape.
Right, there was no letter accompanying it. I just received the tape and assumed it was for me to perform with, and discovered I'd been wrong.
And you informed, obviously, Gigi after this performance.
Yeah,
saying
I wrote
it
to
was
him.
very successful.
Right, I wrote him and told him that I performed it, and I guess I must have received a letter from him that explained that it was not intended for public performance.
Was angry for this?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't. Gigi and I always got along very well. I never saw him. We never were angry at each other, and even for that, I can't imagine that he would be. But, so I never did get a piece that was intended to be performed clarinet and tape. I wish I would have.
And did you have a recording of this concert of Bobosi?
Yeah.
Premiere?
Yeah, it's in the archives of the University of Washington, unless it's one of the tapes that was destroyed by time. And there were certain tapes that just turned to dust because of the quality.
Is it now?
That would be interesting for us to check out. If
All right,
it's
I'll see if I have it.
you
If I do, I'll send it to you.
That would be really nice.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, it was a pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
I enjoyed my 24 hours here. Got to know your archive very well.
I hope you come back.
Sure.
See you